Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry, and this is part 2 of a series you didn't know would have 2 parts. Well, based on some of the comments, I hope you watched to the end of the episode. When I did the top 10 reasons why the Bengals are going to disappoint us all in 2025. That's directly leading to this episode. The top 10 reasons why the Bengals are going to make a run in 2025. And that's how I view everything. So some people, it was fun and predictable, I guess, to read the comments and see the reactions from it. It went as I expected it to go. Some people, I'm not watching this. I'm done with the negativity. Okay, you gotta understand, this is how I view things. I assume this is how many people view things based on the other section of comments of yes, exactly. I'm just trying to mow my lawn, and I'm like, what if the left guard job doesn't get fixed? And it's yeah, that's how I'm going about it too. We got Bengals on the brain a little bit too much here. We're trying to, well, not enjoy the heat wave, but get through it. And so the other part is I do the same thing on the positive end. I'll be out washing my car and I'm doing something mundane I don't even want to do. And sometimes this helps get through the grind of summer. Let's say it's like washing the car, even though I enjoy that. But you're doing it and you go, man, Jamar Chase, Triple Crown. Like, that guy is uncoverable. And now I'm jamming, right? And now I'm good. I'm listening to a podcast or some music or whatever I'm doing, and that job is nothing. So these are the 10 reasons why, 10 reasons why the Bengals are going to make a run, of course. But the 10 things I think about that get me excited, the 10 things that if these all work out for them in their favor, they are definitely going to have a magical season, like a season we're going to remember. Of course, all 10 aren't going to happen, but this is the positive. This is the flip side of the last episode where it's like, man, there are a lot of things that I'm going to enjoy watching about this 2025 team. And if most of these hit, it's going to be a great year. So number 10, I love me some Chase Brown. I mean, you know this. If you've been watching so this will be our 3rd year partnership, First Star and Bengals on the Brain. So that's got to coincide right with when Chase Brown was drafted. And I was like, man, I love Chase Brown when they drafted him. 6th round pick. 5th round pick. Let me correct myself. 5th round pick. Yoshi was the 6th and Brad Robbins. 5th round pick, who I, in our process, in our pre-draft grades, had him as a 2nd rounder. And one of the best running backs in that class. And so far he is already. And so I've been excited for his opportunity. I have been eager to see him handle the load. And last year we got it after Zach Moss went down. And he was efficient. He was good. He was good for fantasy. If you had him in fantasy, if you're one of the people that listened, in the offseason and got him at a discount, no longer at a discount anymore. But last year you benefited from that pretty well down the stretch until he got hurt and just ended up shy of hitting 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns and 1,300 total yards. We'll take that every single year, but there is more meat on that bone. I think Chase Brown can be even better. I think he can be an even better receiver. I think he can be a more consistent runner. I think his patience and timing were getting better and better each week. This is a guy I already think is good and was game ready, NFL ready, being drafted out of Illinois. And there's still another step to his game. But not just him. If the offense uses him like that, I think he can be a bell cow. And it's rare to find that bell cow with that explosiveness like that. There's only a handful of guys like that in the league. And Chase Brown has it. But when you hear Dan Pitcher say, I think he's a top 10 back, and you hear that, we always hear that the Bengals want to run the ball a little bit more. Do they ever? No. But can he be a bigger part of the passing offense too? And his pass protection was great last year. Get that running efficiency up a little bit by getting better offensive line play. You want to get this offense to the next level? I talked about it on the negative side, is they just won't run the ball then, so this offense won't get there. Chase Brown might get them there because he's so dynamic and can do so many things that fit perfectly in the offense he's in right now. And if they ever want to expand it, I think there's more meat on that bone and more room for Chase Brown to grow. He gets me excited for 2025.
what if the special teams does get fixed? I mean, Darren Simmons, his track record is pretty strong. I mean, the Bengals do have one of the best special teams coordinators in all of the league. We get used to it because he's been here forever, but he's usually, more often than not, had good kicking games, had good punting games. Hell, he's only really gone through, for the majority of his tenure in Cincinnati, Kevin Huber was the punter the entire time. Sure, they had Kyle Larson and they ran through some other guys real quick, but he found Huber and that was it. He found Clark Harris and that was it. Before that, Brad St. Louis was good until he wasn't. So to think that he won't fix or find one of the two long snappers to be their long snapper, Wagner, Adamitis, each guy was the top long snapper in their respective draft classes. You're telling me he's not going to get one of those guys to be right? Yeah, he will. You don't think he's going to get Evan McPherson back to where he was? Yes, he will. Ryan Rico's got a freaking cannon for a leg. He's going to get him going. Like, he was already good last year. But, like, as a holder and as a consistent punter, no doubt in my mind. You know, I had on the previous episode, what if it doesn't get fixed? Special teams was a big issue last year. Iced coffee in the summer. You know what I'm saying? It's the way to go in the afternoon. Kids are in their house, losing their minds. My wife works from home. I just get out here. Just chill. I'm trying to close my eyes a little bit. Sometimes I fall asleep. But then I think, nah, Darren Simmons is going to get the special teams on the right track. And if it is, so on the positive side of things, you know, because I looked at the negative side, what if it doesn't get fixed? It could keep them from making the playoffs like it did last year. If it gets fixed, it actually has the makings of one of the best special teams units in the entire NFL. McPherson could be a top 5 kicker, top 3 kicker. Ryan Rico could be a top 5 kicker. You've got 2 long snappers that were top of their class. Figure out which one can do it, or teach one, whatever one. Figure it out. Well, one of them should be able to do it. You get that system down, we're good to go. Yeah, I think I'll go on the positive on this one for 2025. If the Bengals make a run, why they would make a run if they do? It'd be like 2021. Special teams will be really dang good.
You know what really gets me excited about the 2025 season? Number 8. Marius Mims, Orlando Brown Jr. That might be a really, really good offensive tackle combo in 2025. For obvious reasons. Number 1, Orlando Brown Jr. is pretty dang good. And when he played last year, I thought he was really good. Until he got hurt, missed some time, tried to play through it, didn't look quite the same. But when he was playing originally and in the beginning of the year, I thought he was really good. I thought he finished the previous season at a high level. He's a former Pro Bowler, right? We know what Orlando Brown Jr. can be. And I think he's a good fit for this team and the scheme and for Joe Burrow's straight drop back passing offense. Now, Amarius Mims, more of an unknown, but the upside of Mims is through the roof, right? Typically, you don't find these guys that are that big, that athletic, that strong. And because he didn't play a lot, I think some of his technique was overlooked because it was an unknown. Like, well, we really haven't seen him stressed for 60 plays. Yeah, that's true coming out of Georgia. That was the other point. Coming out of a big program. Typically, you don't draft those guys in the second half of the first round. I think Mims would have went top 12 this year, no doubt about it. But the most encouraging thing about Mims is that he kept his head above water as a rookie. And we talked about this with Dylan Fairchild as a rookie at guard. Just got to keep your head above water. Just can't drown as a rookie. And that's a good sign for your future. And then if you look at things like PFF grades and you look at what young guys, because that's the other part of his prospect profile, he was really young, what young guys that perform decently as rookies, what they look like in year 2, you typically see a solid jump. That's a good sign for those guys. And if that's the case, and if Scott Peters is the right guy for him, someone who can take his technique to another level, Mims needs that, right? He needs a couple things, right? One, I thought his technique was good for this limited time at Georgia. And I thought he showed really good patience and balance last year as a rookie, which is not always the case with offensive linemen. He never looked stressed the way that a lot of rookies will at other positions and on the offensive line. Mims was very calm and cool the entire season. Didn't matter who he was playing against. But he could use some technique work still. And I think if you can get him to play a little bit more intense, a little stronger, a little more physical, and a little quicker in the run game, you'll have yourself a potential Pro Bowl player. And I think he's got that upside without question, right? We know what type of player we're talking about. And that is the hardest, those two are the hardest positions to find in the NFL. And maybe even hardest to find a right tackle because they move to left tackle so often. But Mims is a true right tackle all the way through. And it is hard to find your tackle. So if you're telling me the Bengals offensive line has a solid veteran center who works really well with Joe Burrow, communicates great, right? Character-wise, through the roof, team captain type guy, Ted Karras. And they have a veteran, steady left tackle that is good. May not be great. He may not be a top 10 left tackle in the league. Fine. I do not care. He is a good player in Orlando Brown Jr. And then you have the potential for a top 5 right tackle in the league and Amarius Mims because you just have less right tackles, right? Doesn't mean he's necessarily better than Orlando Brown Jr. or could be better. He could be. Of course he could. But because there's not as much competition at right tackle, you're talking about you could have a top 10 right tackle in the league in year 2. I don't think that's out of the question. Then you got to figure out guards. Fine. They've been in worse situations on the offensive line when you consider it from that perspective. That they could be really good at tackle, solid at center, and we just got to figure out the guard positions. And you have 3 veterans and a rookie premium pick from Georgia at that spot. Hey, that's not bad at all. That gets me excited. And can convince me that this offensive line could be much better in 2025 than they've been in the last 4 years. And as I'm restoring my headlights, I think, you know what? You know what could restore the Bengals defense? Is getting a true nose tackle again. I thought the world of DJ Reader. He was fantastic. Not only you could see the impact on the field and his leadership, but watching the film, he did things that I didn't think were possible from a nose tackle position. I tried to advocate as much as I could on social media that this dude deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. Nose tackles are rarely going to make it. Dexter Lawrence being the exception because he gets sacks. But when Reader was hurt, which he was often, to be fair, or when he left this past year to go to Detroit, it was felt. You felt it at linebacker, you felt it on the defensive line versus the run, not just the guys that were replacing Reader, but the guys next to Reader and at the edges. Everyone suffered. The entire defense suffered because of it. He was a guy that could take on 2 and give you an extra player on defense, right? That is the force multipliers, not players. You understand my point. You get a guy like that, he offsets guys around him. So the Bengals went out, and their biggest free agent addition on defense was TJ Slayton of the Packers. And Slayton is that big body dude that can move a little bit and play with nasty power. Now, he's more inconsistent than Reader ever was. I don't know that he's ever reached the consistent high-end run down-to-down play that Reader did. But Slayton's still young, right? He's only going into year 5. He is going to be better than what they had last year, no doubt about it. I think Slayton's got a chance to be a big addition to this defense. Now, he's going under the radar a little bit, and maybe even guys like me are underrating Slayton a bit. But I'm going to play some clips here while I finish restoring my taillights. And if the Bengals defense gets back, and if they're good and physical again, because I think that's an underrated part about all of it, is they weren't physical without Reader. But if they get back to being physical again, because TJ Slayton is that dude at nose tackle, that's why they'll make a run in the postseason. Cutting the grass. Well, the weeds. The grass isn't growing much because it's summertime and nothing kills the weeds, but the grass slows down. The growth slows down. Bengals need growth from Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson. Both defensive tackles drafted last year with premium picks, second, third round. Neither played to the level you want them to play. And at the end of the season, I didn't feel really good about either guy. I didn't feel good about the defensive tackle room all last year and then going into this offseason. Not only did those guys not perform at a level that gives you a ton of hope for their eventual upside, but BJ Hill was a free agent. They didn't have a nose tackle on the roster. They had to cut Sheldon Rankins, right? Of course they did. But then when they signed TJ Slayton, who I think is a big addition to the defense, and then they signed BJ Hill for another 3 years, who's been a great player for them, if not just a very good, steady player, right? Let's not overdo it. But the point is, that means Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson aren't expected to be nose tackle number one and defensive tackle number one, right? When you spend a premium pick on those guys, you hope the upside is that they become DT number one on your roster. And that's where the evaluation and the expectations get a little skewed. I start to go, I don't think they can reach that. So is that a wasted pick if you don't think they can reach that? Or do you reset expectations now that they don't have to be that? Now that the Bengals have committed to those guys through free agency. That lessens what you need Jackson and Jenkins to be. And it upgrades the floor of the defensive tackle room. Sure, did they raise the ceiling? Did they get a DT number one, a Pro Bowl guy? They did not. But did they get better at nose tackle? No doubt. And now, defensive tackle number 3 and defensive tackle number 4 are second-year players that the team spent premium picks on. I like that much more now. Now that has the chance to be quality depth. Remember, McKinley Jackson did not play in the preseason. He was injured. He and Chris Jenkins dealt with injuries last year. And McKinley Jackson ended the year very, very strong, where Chris Jenkins hit a wall, as many rookies do. Going into year 2, typical for defensive tackles to take a big jump from year 1 to year 2. Typically, defensive tackles, interior guys, offense, defensive line, trench players, it is tough. These are full-grown men that have been doing it for years. You typically don't walk in and dominate. If you do, though, that's a special player. But the solid role players, they tend to struggle that rookie year. We should not be writing these guys off because of it. The expectation that they have rebounded year 2s, solid year 2s, really good depth at defensive tackle 3 and 4, that's a fair expectation. The Bengals need the defensive tackle room to get better from a pass rush standpoint and a run defense standpoint. Slayton's here for the run defense. Can one of these two guys provide a little more juice as a pass rusher? Maybe. But overall, the depth and the quality of the defensive tackle room has really, really taken a step. And I won't be surprised if we look at Jackson and Jenkins after year 2 in 2025 and say, those guys got much better.
And you can't tell me you don't think about this defense and how bad they were last year. And knowing what we know, that the Bengals wanted Al Golden completely, right? That could be seen as a negative, and I think it may have even spun it that way. Like, what if he's not the right guy? But at the same time, the defense severely underperformed last year, right? If they perform even average this year, and maybe they're just more opportunistic, maybe they just create more turnovers, maybe they just create more chaos, more opportunities for the offense to get the ball back through turnovers. Wouldn't that be enough? Wouldn't that be worth it? What if they're just more sound, less breakdowns? They didn't bring in more talent too much. Oren Burks, TJ Slayton. We did a part on TJ Slayton already. My point is, Al Golden might be the dude. He might be the guy. The reason the Bengals were so convinced, and it's windy out here. I hope the mic's okay. But the reason the Bengals were so convinced is because Al Golden was convincing. Because he told them, hey, you got a lot of young guys on this team. You've spent a ton of draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. You got to get these guys to play well. And he's not wrong. And they're not wrong for thinking that. We've made the same points ourselves. That if Golden can figure it out and get the Jordan Battles to play well, the Dax Hills, the DJ Turners, Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight, Miles Murphy. I should probably pay attention to what I'm doing. Joseph Osai even. Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, who we've mentioned already. But you get those guys to play well, and you get Logan Wilson back to form. You get Cam Taylor-Britt evened out, right? You get Geno Stone playing the way we've seen a good coordinator get him to play. It was with Baltimore, but you know what I mean. Al Golden doesn't have to be a top 10 defensive coordinator. They've spent enough resources on the defensive side of the ball in terms of the draft. He just needs to get them to play at an acceptable level. And if they do, and if the majority of them do because of him, he's going to be the coach of the year for the Bengals, right? Like, there's a chance that he's exactly what they need. Not to be a top 10 defense. I don't know if they have that much talent. But to be a top 16 defense, they have drafted enough talent to be that. Most of these guys are underperforming. And you may say, I didn't like Miles Murphy when he was drafted. I didn't like DJ Turner when he was drafted. Whatever. All of those things don't matter. They're on the team now. And even if you didn't like them, they can perform much better than what they have. Turner's been solid. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guys who haven't played well. But if you get them to play well, if you get all these guys to turn the corner, to perform at the level we think they can perform at, well, that's how you give a facelift. I almost nailed it one take. Facelift to this defense. That's what I've been working on my car the last couple of weeks. New grill, new badges, restored the headlights, started fixing the paint chips, and it's an '08, It's got a lot of miles on it, a lot of paint chips. It's seen the road. But so is this defense. And I think Al Golden can take them to where they need to be in 2025.
And number 4, now that I think about it, Trey Hendrickson, if they get him in camp and they get him being what he's supposed to be, right? Get him on track, get him what he's been the last 4 years, which has been the best pass rusher they may have ever had through a 4-year stretch. The best free agent they've ever brought in. We're talking 4 straight Pro Bowls, second in Defensive Player of the Year last year, all-pro pass rusher. Those guys don't grow on trees, and the Bengals have one. And he hasn't had a lot of help, right? They've gotten nothing out of Sam Hubbard as a pass rusher the last 2 years at least. Never was a great pass rusher. For as much love as we have for Sam Hubbard, and we do, to be clear, he wasn't a great pass rusher. Good against the run, great teammate, character guy, Cincinnati's own. Props to Sam Hubbard. But as a pass rusher, he probably played way too many snaps. And largely because they didn't have anyone else to replace him either. Myles Murphy didn't show the development you're looking for. Joseph Osai was on a milk carton or hurt, and when he played, he flashed, and they kicked him inside. So you still ended up with Sam Hubbard on the other side. And it is important to have that other pass rusher opposite or on the inside at defensive tackle. Whether it's you'd like more than BJ Hill, you'd like more than what Chris Jenkins or McKinley Jackson project to be. But in this scenario where, man, why would the Bengals make a run this year? Why would the Bengals get further than they're probably projected to make the playoffs, right? But if they're going to make a run at this thing, if they're going to go to the Super Bowl again, it's probably because Trey has another fantastic year, like he's continued to have every year in Cincinnati, and they stumble into upgrades. Maybe not stumble. That's a wrong way to put it. They drafted 2 first-round picks. Myles Murphy, Shamar Stewart. And Joseph Osai, we had a first-round grade on as draft guys in 2021. You saw it last year when Hubbard went on IR. Instantly, they looked more athletic on the D-line. They moved at a quicker pace. They could do more in the pass rush. It's not a shock. Again, this is not a teardown of Sam Hubbard. But we talked about this when Tyler Boyd was let go. We talked about it a little bit when Joe Mixon was let go. There are upgrade opportunities when you lose a veteran. And we talked about it when safety too, when Von Bell was gone. We're like, Jordan Battle could be better than that, or Dax Hill could be better than that. And they had their issues at safety, and maybe they'll have their issues at defensive end without Sam Hubbard. Very possible. But if they make a run, then it's likely because Myles Murphy, Joseph Osai, and even Shamar Stewart, even though he just got here, were held back because Hubbard played a little bit too much. They relied on Hubbard a little bit too much. You need to let the young guys grow. You need to let Myles Murphy grow. You need to let Joseph Osai grow. And if those guys take a step and complement Trey Hendrickson better, or maybe Hendrickson complements them, I think it works both ways when your pass rush is complementing each other, pushing pressures to each other to accumulate sacks. If the Bengals make a run at this thing, I think it's because those young defensive ends, combined with Trey Hendrickson, have a great year. Doing the book for my daughter's team. She's 8 years old. It's machine pitch. It's playoffs. They've got a good team, though. And they should win it all. But this is a tight game. Somehow it's 3-3 going into the last inning. And I can't not think about the Bengals. They're always in the back of my mind. That's why we get the show name Bengals on the Brain, right? It's an unhealthy relationship. I think about them more than they think about me. But at this moment, I'm thinking about Zach Taylor. And I'm thinking, on the negative side, I did maybe he's just not good enough. But on the positive side, there might be some real pressure for Zach Taylor and the Zach Taylor era as a whole. Because the team really hasn't changed their ways. Not too much, slow progression. But I think once they've turned over the defensive coordinator, the offensive line coach, run game coordinator, I think the dial starts to get pointed at you, Zach. And that could be a good thing. I think for the first time, there's a little bit of pressure because Burrow's not injured, right, going into camp, or not expected to be. There was one other time, and then everything went downhill with the calf injury. But the slow starts are a real thing. We weren't sure they were before because Burrow was always hurt. And maybe some people brought it up, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, there were excuses every time before this. There's no excuses. You have who you want as the offensive line coach. You've got a new defensive coordinator. That should help get these young guys playing. The microscope is on Zach Taylor. And that's a good thing, I think. I think Taylor and Taylor's teams have typically performed their best when the pressure was on. And I know that may sound crazy because we usually attribute that to what, Joe Burrow and Lou Anarumo's defense. But Zach Taylor's the head coach. He can't just only get the blame and none of the credit. When the pressure was on, these Bengals teams have performed. Whether it was Jake Browning starting and they got back in the playoff hunt, whether it was last year when they were pretty much mathematically almost eliminated down to a 1% chance to climb all the way back and make week 18 mean something, to the previous 2 years where they rattled off 10 straight wins to get to win the division, get in the playoffs, and then make it all the way to the AFC Championship game to lose by 3. And the previous year, no one expected anything in 2021. Their backs were against the wall countless times that season in each playoff game and every big game leading up to the end of the season. And Zach Taylor's team responded. It almost feels like a us versus them situation. Zach and this team versus everyone who doesn't believe in them, everyone that has written them off, maybe even the organization. Everything that could go wrong has, but they're still here. And if the Bengals make a run in 2025, it'll be Taylor's best performance. You know what really gets me excited about 2025? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That combo, that duo. And the Bengals have had some great duos in their history, right? They've always had great receivers. They've always had a great number one. They very often, I know I said always have a great number one, they always have had. They very often had a great number one and a great number two. And there are teams around the league that don't even have one of these guys. The Bengals have two. So if that's not enough to get you excited, I don't know what else is. But not only do they have them, they work well with Joe Burrow. They're in their prime. The offense and Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher feature them heavily. And it doesn't matter if Chase misses a game. It doesn't matter if T. Higgins misses a game. We don't want them missing games. But if they do, the other guy gets 15 targets right away. And that leads into the other point of not only are these two great, right? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in their primes right now. One's coming off a triple crown. He's the best receiver in the league, according to personnel people and execs. I think it was Jeremy Fowler that did it. I might be wrong. I think it was Fowler. Pulling them. Honorable mention for T. Higgins. Okay, he's not a top 10 receiver. Fine. How many teams have the number 15 receiver in the league? Oh, both are coming off their best years of their careers. That's nice. Let's build on that. Let's continue that. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase in their primes together for the next at least 3 years. That's fun. And the level they can take this offense, we've already seen they can carry this offense to top 5 offense in the league, right? Doesn't it still feel like there's more to Chase and to Higgins? I mean, like, Chase didn't start the year hot. You remember that Patriots game, right? T misses how many games? He missed that Patriots game right away. We find out he's not going to be in it. He misses that Eagles game. That was a big game. The Bengals 17-17 at one point and ended up getting blown out by the Eagles. T misses that Chiefs game week 2. So there's a lot of room for T to stay healthy and think of the impact he could have on the season. But Jamar also starting off this year with no distractions, without worrying about his contract, without being pissed off at the organization. As great as those guys are, and they get me super excited for the season. And if they make a run, kind of like how they did in 2021, where Chase is having his moments in the playoffs, T is having his moments in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. I mean, Chase did too, but like those guys almost won it then, and they didn't even know what they were doing. Now they're in their primes. And the Bengals have continued to build around those pieces. Mike Gesicki is a great fit. And when T misses time and Gesicki had to stand in and be the number 2, he did it and had some big games. And then now, I think one of the year 3 of Andre Osubash, he continues to take his incremental steps that he has the first 2 years. Solid player, right? I'll take Yoshi on my team any day of the week. But Jermaine Burton, when he was drafted, we talked about the upside. We talked about everything he could be and can do. There was pressure for him to take over for T. Higgins, right? That's why he was drafted. There's none of that anymore. There's not even pressure for him to be wide receiver 3. Like, we're cool with understanding that Mike Gesicki is option number 3. Andre Osubash, when they go out with 3 wide receivers plus Gesicki, he's going to go out there. Burton just has to be Jermaine Burton and just has to help once in a while and just be who he is and be a deep threat and have those ball skills and win downfield and provide something no one else can amongst the depth receivers. And then if T misses a game, you ready? You ready to see 10 targets? Like, this receiving core, not only is it the best duo in the league, depth-wise, if Burton responds, if Charlie Jones can stay healthy, I still think he can help the team. They like Isaiah Williams. We'll see how good he is. I mean, he might be a surprise player. But how much more I like Yoshi and Burton compared to when we were considering, even Yoshi, remember fans saying this, when we were considering that they may replace T. Higgins, and now they don't have to. And now we have 2 more years of Yoshi, 3 more years of Burton behind Higgins. This receiving core is fantastic. Plus Gesicki. Can't forget him. He's a receiver. He's only a tight end by name. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is enough of a reason to watch Bengals football on their own. And then you pair them with Joe Burrow. If they make a run, it's because these 2 receivers have another excellent year. And the last, but certainly not the least, of the reasons why the Bengals will make a run in 2025 and win this thing, I'm saying it now, win the whole thing, is because they have Joe Burrow. As simple as that. I mean, it's why we've had hopes since 2020. It's how they got there in 2021. And I know they had so many other factors going in their favor in 21 and 22. You know, they did just end up 3 points short of repeating as AFC champs, but it's Joe Burrow. And it's the way he prepares. It's the way he carries himself. It's what he demands of those around him. It's how he elevates the entire franchise. Maybe not to the level we had hoped originally, because the team still has, and I'm talking about the organization, the front office, still set in their ways. Burrow has put it on them a little bit, and he's been public about it, and yet haven't moved them. Maybe not as far as we want. Maybe some, right? They did sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this offseason. So maybe he's pushed them some, but on the field. Once that's all done, we're done talking about contracts and all that. Hopefully, once Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight are all signed, but just take away that. The season starts, you're not worried about it anymore. The way he prepares, conducts himself, leads the team. I think it's great. I think that's what you need. Like everyone else now, I think in 2025, we're at this point, but I've been making content long enough, going back to like 2010, when me or anyone else would say, you need an elite quarterback to reach the ultimate goal, to reach that final destination. And somebody would always respond with, give me a good run game and a defense over that any day. Don't get me wrong. I will take that. The Eagles, did they have an elite quarterback last year? Jalen Hurts is pretty good, but it's an elite quarterback. They had everything else. The Eagles are a hard comparison because they do so many things. They pull those levers that the Bengals front office won't. So when you're in the situation where it's not comparable, you're more like the Chiefs, right, in how you build things, well, then you need that special quarterback. You need that guy that can elevate those around him. You need that guy that can carry the team, that can put it on his shoulders and carry the load and carry the pressure and carry everything that goes along with being the franchise quarterback, the face of a franchise, a face of the entire NFL. Joe Burrow might be the biggest superstar they've ever had. And I say might be because they've had a few. Like Chad Johnson is up there. There's others, of course, but just staying on the Burrow point here for the final point. All of that to say, when you get him on the field and when he's healthy, and when you put him with those aforementioned receivers that the Bengals have assembled for him, he is the best passing quarterback in the NFL. And he is mobile enough for today's NFL to still stand out in a positive way when things break down. When pressured, he's the best quarterback in the league. He's probably the most accurate quarterback in the league that throws with the best anticipation, best touch, best timing. You wrap that all up, and that makes him the best passer. It's like when we were watching Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, right? That era, the previous era, maybe that was 2 eras ago, actually, now that I think about it. Because then you ended up getting the Big Bens, the Aaron Rodgers, who really dominated, and the Tony Romo era right at the tail end. Brady lasted 3 eras, right? But right in the tail end of the early 2000s, where these guys could move and scramble and make plays. And it was a difference between the two grouping until Aaron Rodgers became like an elite processing, accuracy, anticipation. He didn't have turnovers. He was the best of everything for a while. That's why he won MVPs at the rate he did. And then we saw the next generation of very good athletes that could also throw the ball, right? The current generation dominated by the Lamar Jacksons, Pat Mahomes, who's more of a passer than a runner, but he can move, definitely, clearly, right? That's an asset of his. And Josh Allen's last year's MVP, and so many of these guys that get drafted in the same way. Burrow now stands out as an elite processor, as an elite accuracy ball thrower, traditional quarterback, pocket management, pocket movement, IQ, if I didn't say that. And all of that now makes him special in a different way and makes him elite in a different way that these other guys, I'm not sure they can get to that level. I'm not sure Mahomes can get to that level. I'm not sure Allen can get to that level or Jackson can get to the level. And if you're not a fan of the Bengals, you may misunderstand what I'm saying there. Those guys are as good and sometimes better than Joe Burrow because of the physical attributes that they have that Burrow does not possess. But he has enough escapability. He's got great pocket management. He's got enough playmaking in that mentality of his that it's not a detriment to his game to not be a super athlete like Lamar Jackson and not be a Clydesdale like Josh Allen, to not be the slipperiest dude in the pocket of all time like Pat Mahomes is. What he makes up for not having the strong arms that those guys have is the accuracy, touch, anticipation, intelligence that these guys don't have the same level that Joe Burrow does. So just being fair and laying it all out there, if you're a fan of another team wondering how I can be so positive about Burrow, because I can see they don't have that. And that's what makes Burrow unique and special and hard to defend against. Different. Those other guys are hard to defend against for different reasons. But if the Bengals make a run and they win it, and they win it with Joe Burrow, it's because he played like he did last year all year long. Go back and I've rewatched the 2024 season. And you start to see LSU, what I've always called it LSU Burrow, when he starts to navigate in the pocket and extend plays and make things happen. Sometimes hit that back foot, take off running, and then sling it sidearm to get it where it needs to be. That didn't happen until like week 3, 4, 5 for sure, and then on. You start that way in September, week 1, and the Bengals are making the playoffs. And there's a chance if he can carry that all season, they're fighting for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Even with all the issues from the previous episode, even with that, because they have Joe Burrow, and because we know the level he can play and do it at a consistent level that these other guys don't touch, because we know he can do that, if they can get him to do that from week 1, the Bengals will have a chance to make a run in 2025. And for that, that's what continues to get me excited, continues to have me wake up and jump out of bed and ready to go for the day, because Joe Burrow. As crazy as that sounds, as weird as that sounds, and I'm aware of it, but are you telling me as a Bengals fan, you still don't get excited for number 9 under center? He's never under center. For number 9 in shotgun. I still do. And, that's why we watch. So let's see what crazy thing he does. Let's see how high he can set that bar. And we're almost there. So until next time on Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics, it is and always will be Houday.
Bengals fans, tired of the same old post-game chatter? Want real insight beyond the scoreboard? Then you need Bengals on the Brain with Joe Goodberry, presented by First Star Logistics. Joe Goodberry isn't just a fan, he's a die-hard Bengals football analyst. Every week, Joe dives deep into the Bengals game film, breaking down the plays that mattered, revealing hidden strategies, and uncovering the true impact of individual performances. Get ready for post-game analysis like you've never heard before, player evaluations that go beyond the stats, and the most in-depth Bengals draft coverage on the internet. Don't just watch the Bengals, understand the Bengals. Subscribe to Bengals on the Brain with Joe Goodberry on the First Star Media Group's YouTube channel. Get smart, get obsessed, get Bengals on the Brain.